If you're a diehard Browns fan and love breaking down the game like we do, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a blitz. The Cleveland Browns are once again at the center of quarterback drama, and if you've been following this team for the past 2 decades, you know this script all too well. The franchise has been through a carousel of quarterbacks, with countless draft picks, trade experiments, and veteran signings trying to stabilize the most important position in football. Yet here we are again, in late 2025, talking about the future of the Browns' quarterback situation and the possibility of dipping back into the draft in 2026. Cleveland may have picked up their first win of the season last week, but even that small victory hasn't been enough to silence the whispers that this roster is still destined for a top selection come April. The Browns have Joe Flacco holding things together for now, but at 40 years old, everyone knows he's just a placeholder. The future is supposed to belong to Dillon Gabriel out of Oregon or Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado, but questions are mounting about whether either of these rookies is truly capable of carrying this franchise into the next era. There is a reason the conversation around Cleveland never seems to stray too far from quarterbacks. The city has been starved for consistency at that position ever since the days of Bernie Kosar, and every attempt since then has felt like a temporary bandage rather than a permanent solution. With Gabriel and Sanders on the roster, the Browns entered this season with cautious optimism, hoping at least one of the two would flash the tools needed to take control of the offense. Both are exciting in their own ways. Gabriel with his deep ball accuracy and poise in the pocket, Sanders with his playmaking flair and calm demeanor under pressure. But potential doesn't pay the bills in the NFL, and patience runs thin in Cleveland when the rest of the AFC is stacked with elite young quarterbacks who can tilt the field in their team's favor week after week. That pressure is magnified by the fact that the Browns have multiple first-round picks in the 2026 draft, giving them a golden opportunity to reload if these rookies don't pan out. Ken Carman of 92.3 The Fan captured the mood perfectly on his radio show when he told listeners to get comfortable with the idea of drafting yet another quarterback. His blunt words hit home because he knows what the fans are thinking. This cycle of uncertainty has dragged on for too long. Carman pointed out Penn State's Drew Aller as a name Browns fans should be watching closely, even bringing up key upcoming games where Aller's performance could influence how comfortable Cleveland feels with making him the centerpiece of their draft plans. And Carman isn't wrong. If the Browns are sitting near the top of the board and have a chance to grab a prospect like Aller, or maybe Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, Lanoris Sellers from South Carolina, or Cade Klubnik out of Clemson, they can't afford to hesitate. The window for building a true contender can close quickly in this league, and the Browns need to decide whether Gabriel or Sanders is the guy, or if it's time to reset once again. The intriguing part of this story is that Cleveland isn't doomed to a full rebuild. Unlike past seasons, the roster actually has some strong foundational pieces. The defense is competitive, led by one of the league's most dominant pass rushers in Myles Garrett, and the offensive line remains among the more reliable units in the AFC. The problem, as always, comes back to the quarterback position. Flacco may give them flashes of competence this year, but he's not the long-term answer. That's why fans are so anxious to see what Gabriel and Sanders can do once they get snaps later in the season. Gabriel, with his quick release and college success at Oregon, has been hyped as a possible hidden gem. Sanders, on the other hand, carries a different type of pressure as the son of NFL Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, and he has shown both brilliance and inconsistency in his journey from Colorado to the pros. Both rookies will have the chance to prove themselves, but both also know that Cleveland's front office will not hesitate to pull the plug if they don't see signs of a franchise-caliber quarterback. The upcoming months will therefore be fascinating for Browns fans, because the decision the team makes in 2026 could define the next decade. If Gabriel or Sanders flashes potential late in the season, Cleveland could pivot and use its draft capital to strengthen other areas of the roster, perhaps adding another playmaker on offense or bolstering the secondary. But if both players struggle, if neither can convince the coaching staff that he's capable of taking the reins, the Browns will be almost forced into drafting another quarterback. It's a high-stakes gamble, and the uncertainty is only heightened by the fact that the 2026 draft class is shaping up to be loaded at the position. Prospects like Drew Aller and Cade Klubnik have already been circled by analysts as possible first-round locks, and teams that need a quarterback will be lining up to get them. Cleveland, with 2 first-round picks, has the ammo to move up the board and grab one if necessary. That's the silver lining. Even if the rookies flop, the team is not without options. But this is also the Browns we're talking about, a franchise that has made a habit of botching quarterback evaluations. Fans remember Brady Quinn, Brandon Weeden, Johnny Manziel, Deshaun Kaiser, and a long list of names who were once billed as saviors only to flame out in spectacular fashion. Even Baker Mayfield, who briefly brought hope with a playoff win, was ultimately sent packing when the front office grew impatient. That history lingers over every decision the Browns make, and it's why the conversation around Gabriel and Sanders feels so heavy. Fans don't just want to see flashes, they want assurance, something concrete that proves this cycle can finally end. They want one of these rookies to grab the job and never let go, to establish himself as the kind of leader who can stand toe-to-toe with the likes of Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow. Whether that happens remains to be seen, but the doubts are growing louder with every passing week. From a broader NFL perspective, the Browns situation is a reminder of just how unforgiving the league can be. Teams live and die by their quarterback play, and even strong rosters can collapse under the weight of mediocrity under center. Cleveland is not the only team eyeing the 2026 draft class with envy, but their circumstances are unique. They already have 2 rookies on the roster, giving them a built-in evaluation period before the next draft arrives. That dynamic creates tension because every snap Gabriel and Sanders take this year could influence the franchise's decision-making next spring. If Gabriel throws a few dazzling touchdowns, fans will clamor for him to be given another year. If Sanders shows composure and leadership, the coaching staff may want to build around him. But if they both struggle, the front office will have no choice but to pivot, and when that happens, the debate about which 2026 prospect best fits the Browns system will dominate sports talk radio across Ohio. Ken Carman's advice to fans, to hope for a strong showing from Drew Aller in big games, is about more than just entertainment. It's about preparing the fan base for the reality that the Browns could be drafting another quarterback in 2026, and that their future may once again hinge on a college prospect's development. That's a tough pill to swallow for a fan base that has been burned so many times before, but it's the truth of where the franchise stands. The front office cannot ignore the possibility that neither Gabriel nor Sanders will work out, and the opportunity to reset with a new talent could be too tempting to pass up. That's why the games down the stretch this year are so important. Not because they'll determine playoff seeding, but because they'll reveal whether the Browns' quarterback of the future is already in the building or still waiting in next year's draft class. As we look ahead, the Browns' quarterback story feels like a ticking clock. FLACCO is holding down the fort, but time is running out on his career. Gabriel and Sanders will get their additions, but the evaluation period is short, and the stakes are sky-high. The front office has to decide whether to roll the dice with what they have or to cash in their draft capital and go hunting for the next big thing. The fan base, weary but still hopeful, will be watching every throw, every interception, every touchdown, desperate for signs that maybe, just maybe, the cycle of instability can finally come to an end. Whether that happens with Gabriel, Sanders, or a new name from the 2026 draft remains the ultimate question, and one that will shape the Browns' identity for years to come. For now, all eyes are on the rookies, but the shadow of Drew Aller and the rest of the incoming class looms large over Cleveland, reminding everyone that the search for a true franchise quarterback is far from over. Enjoying the content so far? Smash that like button and drop your take in the comments. We want to hear what you think about the Browns this season. It's been one of those weeks in Cleveland where the quiet whispers behind closed doors finally turned into a headline. And of all people, the man to pull the curtain back wasn't a rookie desperate for attention, wasn't a coach fighting for his job, wasn't even one of the star players trying to make a statement. No, it was Joe Flacco. Yes, that Joe Flacco. The veteran quarterback, the steady hand, the man most people thought had already played his last meaningful snap years ago, came forward and said what nobody else inside the Cleveland Browns locker room had dared to say out loud. It wasn't a rant. It wasn't finger-pointing. It wasn't even an emotional outburst after a tough loss. It was simply a raw observation, delivered with the calmness of a guy who's seen too much football to care about politicking. And in doing so, He sparked the kind of reaction across the fan base and the media that only happens when the truth finally escapes the shadows. The Browns, as we know, have lived in this constant cycle of hope and heartbreak. The roster is stacked, the defense has been dominant, and the fan base is desperate for a deep playoff run. But at the center of it all has been this awkward silence, this collective refusal from the organization to address the elephant in the room. Quarterback questions, chemistry issues, the feeling that, despite the talent on the roster, something's just off. Nobody wanted to go there. Not the coaches, not the young stars, not even the media insiders who usually thrive on stirring the pot. Everyone was walking on eggshells, because pointing out the obvious in Cleveland could easily get you labeled as a distraction, or worse, as someone not fully committed to the program. But FLACCO, a man who already has a Super Bowl ring, who has nothing left to prove to anyone, decided enough was enough. What makes this moment so fascinating is the timing. FLACCO wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be on the Browns roster, wasn't supposed to be making headlines in 2025. Yet here he is, back in the conversation, not just for his play, but for his words. And what he said hit harder than any deep throw he's made in his career. He spoke about the vibe in the building, the hesitation, the lack of direct accountability. He said, in so many words, that there are conversations happening privately that need to be brought into the open, that the Browns have a tendency to avoid hard truths until it's too late. And while he never singled anyone out, everyone knew exactly what he was pointing at. The quarterback situation, the leadership vacuum, the tension between the offensive philosophy and the players expected to execute it. It was all there, laid bare in a few sentences from the veteran who has absolutely nothing to lose. Fans ate it up instantly. Social media lit up with reactions, with clips of FLACCO's words spreading like wildfire. Some praised him for his honesty, for saying what they'd been yelling at their televisions for months. Others questioned whether it was really his place, whether a guy brought in as a short-term patch should be the one calling out the silence inside the organization. But that's the thing about FLACCO. He doesn't need anyone's permission. He's been through every possible NFL scenario. He's won the biggest games, endured the longest slumps, been written off, and then resurrected more times than anyone thought possible. If anyone's earned the right to speak freely, it's him. And by doing so, he may have actually done the Browns a favor, because now the conversations that needed to happen can't be ignored anymore. Inside the building, you can almost imagine the ripple effect. Coaches having hushed meetings, front office executives carefully choosing their public statements, teammates wondering how much they can say without crossing a line. That's the power of a veteran voice. It disrupts the usual silence, forces people to face uncomfortable realities. The Browns have been sold as contenders, but contenders don't tiptoe around the truth. They confront it. They fix it. They move forward. And for once, it wasn't a headline driven by speculation or an anonymous source. It was Joe FLACCO, sitting there calmly, saying the things no one else in orange and brown wanted to admit. What's even more intriguing is how this shifts the perception of FLACCO himself. For years he's been painted as the elite but not elite guy, the steady presence but not the vocal leader. Now he's flipping that narrative. Now he's showing that maybe his value to a team isn't just about what he can do on the field, but about the perspective he brings off it. Think about it. In a league where image control is everything, where players are trained to give bland answers, here comes a guy who isn't afraid to throw the truth downfield the same way he used to launch bombs to his receivers. And the impact of that truth could end up being more significant than any touchdown pass he throws in Cleveland. Of course, not everyone in the locker room will be thrilled. Some players thrive on keeping things in-house. Some coaches bristle at the idea of a player stepping into the leadership spotlight uninvited. But there's no denying the spark. The Browns now have to deal with the reality that their internal silence is no longer protected. They can either double down on the status quo, pretending everything is fine, or they can embrace the challenge FLACCO indirectly laid down. Because make no mistake, what he said wasn't just commentary, it was a challenge. A dare for the organization to be honest with itself. A reminder that championship teams don't hide from the truth. They confront it head-on, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. Cleveland fans, long-suffering and endlessly loyal, are watching this unfold with a mix of frustration and hope. Frustration because it feels like the same old story, hope because maybe, just maybe, Flacco's words are the catalyst for real change. They know talent isn't the issue. They've seen glimpses of what this roster can do when everything clicks. What's missing has always been cohesion, identity, the kind of ruthless honesty that keeps everyone accountable. And now, thanks to a quarterback who wasn't even supposed to be here, that honesty is on the table. In the grand scheme of the NFL, this might look like a small ripple, but in Cleveland, it's seismic. It changes the conversations on sports radio. It shifts the tone of press conferences. It forces fans to recalibrate their expectations. The Browns are no longer just a team trying to push through adversity. They're a team being called out from within by one of the most unlikely sources imaginable. And that could be the spark they've been missing all along. What happens next will define not just this season, but potentially the trajectory of the franchise. Will Flacco's words galvanize the locker room, unite the players under a common purpose, and inspire a deeper level of accountability? Or will they create fractures, exposing divisions that were better left hidden? That's the drama now hanging over Cleveland, and it all comes back to a veteran quarterback who decided silence wasn't an option anymore. And here's the kicker. Flacco didn't say it with anger, didn't say it to stir chaos. He said it because he cares. He's been in this league long enough to know how rare opportunities are. He sees the talent in that locker room. He sees the potential in that defense. He sees the window that so many other franchises would kill to have. And from his perspective, the worst thing you can do with that kind of opportunity is waste it by pretending problems don't exist. So he did what leaders do, even if he doesn't carry the official title. He spoke up. He forced the conversation. And in Cleveland, that might just be the bravest play anyone has made all year. Thanks for riding with us on another Browns Blitz. If you liked the video, share it with a fellow fan, hit subscribe, and ring that bell so you're always part of the Dawg Pound conversation. Go Browns!